Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I recently saw it in theaters the day after release because I was so excited, and what I got was pretty amazing. There's been a lot of debate between fans and critics alike about the direction of this new Disney interpretation of the Star Wars universe. People arguing about whether they're treating this property right. So I feel like this was definitely an interesting review to get out my thoughts on, and I have very limited time because as of recording this, I leave for Christmas vacation tomorrow. So yeah, let's get into the review. Let's start out by talking about characters. Most of the people that were present in the last film are here, and even better. We of course have the return of Poe Dameron. He wasn't very present in the first film, so we get a lot more of him on screen and in some of the main action sequences. And he also has this little conflict with General Leia. Her being in this film is a bit bittersweet, I know. Also, we have Vice Admiral Holdo. She was kind of unnecessary, very flat. Could have removed her from the film. Would have made no difference. Finn is, of course, in this film. He had some stuff to do, mainly with another character and a controversial subplot I'll talk about later. But the standout returns of characters are definitely Rey, Kylo Ren, and of course, Luke Skywalker. So I think one of the most surprising things about this film is that Rey, who we were introduced to in The Force Awakens, and she was really controlling and navigating the plot, she's actually out of most of the main action. And that might be a bit alerting to people who really wanted to see more of her, but I think her personality really shines, and it's one of the things that makes this film a little more unique than most Star Wars movies. It's really quite character-driven, rather than just action all the time blowing things up, though there is plenty of that. Picking up from Episode 7, Rey, of course, hands Luke Skywalker the lightsaber that she found of his, and he promptly throws it off the cliff. That part was hilarious. Good job, Mark Hamill. Rey discovers that Luke is very fed up with the Jedi cause after he had to train Ben Solo, and he feels like he failed him, and he feels like he was too far gone to the dark side, and even tried to kill him, but put it away until it was too late, and he discovered it. That part was just... that was emotional, man. Rey comes there to be trained by Luke, but kind of ends up being his teacher, to make him change his ways and have more hope in the Resistance cause, as she is sort of trying to recruit him and have him return to his friends and such. Rey is also convinced that Kylo can change from her very personal telepathic Force conversations with him that occurred pretty frequently in the first part of the film. Again, I thought it was very in character for her. I mean, she is this really fierce fighter who is very independent, but she also has a compassionate side, and it was kind of nice to just see that one-on-one with her and Kylo Ren. And they have some great scenes together. Most notably, the scene where he, of course, betrays her and brings her to his leaders, and then severs him in half, which had the whole audience clapping, along with many other just great, memorable, well-planned out scenes. Then they had a very well choreographed fight scene with the guards that were surrounding Snoke, and Kylo Ren Adam Driver just does a fantastic job of portraying Kylo Ren. I really think he's a very promising villain, and it was interesting to see him sort of to take charge of the First Order rather than just an emperor who just manipulates him always. He really started to be a leader to this evil force that we're dealing with. And he also just portrays such a conflicted man who's been turned to the dark side, but still has a bit of good left in him that he sort of tried to communicate to Rey, but ultimately just couldn't go there. He's still very drawn to the dark side. Since it's a Star Wars movie, there's not really a set story. It's more of a natural progression and reaction to events that happen. So there's not a whole lot of like plot stuff I have to cover, but there are just a few little bits that I wanted to talk about. And first off, we have sort of the Rey's parents alluding thing. That thing didn't really go anywhere. The whole movie has this theme of sort of, forgetting about the past, let the past die, and all that philosophy mumbo jumbo. But this part just felt really anticlimactic, and almost like I don't think the audience really need to know any aspect of it, because it was just so disappointing and it didn't really fit with the rest of the film. Another scene I actually really enjoyed was the interaction between Luke and Yoda, and that's really where the sort of themes about the past really start to sprout up, where he burns down the sanctuary that kept all the important Jedi texts, and he basically says, you don't really need to know all that. It really comes from your heart and your mind, and if you're finally at peace, I think anyone can achieve the Force. And God, I wish that was real life. Like, I could just, that'd be cool. Like, Morty Mass, come to me. Now, for the aforementioned sort of controversial subplot between Finn and Rose, a lot of reviewers were saying it wasn't necessary and stuff, and that was sort of where the movie started to bog down. And I personally found this bit entertaining and very interesting, but looking at the bigger picture of things, I think they should have written their way out of that, and even just discard Rose and Holdo altogether, because I feel like introducing new characters in this film it didn't work. I didn't find really many scenes in this film that weren't entertaining. I just see that there was obviously some trimming to do to make it just a little cleaner. I think the film was enjoyable in its own right, just at this length, but it did get a little weird at the end, where there were several moments where the film could have ended and then it didn't, and it stretched out for longer. And that was sort of the biggest criticisms I have of the film. But just compared to all the other blockbusters out there, so this is such a well done movie. I heavily enjoyed it. Now let's talk about the Force. A lot of the criticisms I've seen in this movie are from hardcore, die-hard fans that are really upset with the depiction of the Force. So I figured I would touch on some of the uses of the Force that are sort of iffy in this movie. The first is when the bridge of one of the Resistance ships is blown to oblivion. General Leia goes flying out into space, and then she sort of Force Mary Poppins her way back to the ship. That looked terrible. I don't understand how that works, because I don't think that's really what the Force does. I don't think you can move yourself to another destination. I think you can manipulate other objects. But yeah, that part was a little weird, and I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of people are talking about, and that I personally agree with. But it's also just sort of sad, because I have no idea how they're going to handle the death of Carrie Fisher in the next movie, because she's alive throughout this whole movie, and it's a little strange how they're going to handle that, especially since they said they're not going to recreate her with CGI. So it's kind of weird seeing her almost die, and then she's fine, and then she's going to die again. It's just, it really kind of messes up the story, and I don't mean that to be insensitive. Yeah, we're just gonna move on from that. Kylo and Ren use Force telepathy. It's not something we've seen a ton, but I looked at the most professional source there is out there, Wikipedia, and I found out it has been used before, but never to this extent where it was like a main part of the plot. And it probably should be a lot harder than it looks, but it didn't really bother me that much, though it was kind of confusing switching back between, you know, two characters, and I was just like, what? The physics of it aren't particularly well explained, but you know what? Movie magic. Now, at the end of the movie, when the Resistance has sort of been hiding out in this base out in the middle of nowhere, and the First Order sort of comes, we see Luke and Kylo Ren sort of have a little bit of a battle, and it turns out he was using like a force projection, which is completely new. However, I have more of a problem with what Leia did in the beginning of the movie than I do with this, because this was a really sort of clever scene. I didn't really pick up on it, even though it should have been obvious, because he did look a little bit different. Probably for Leia's sake, he didn't want to seem like such an old, bitter man. But it turns out that this actually took so much strength out of him that he dies, which was a risky move. It was a daring move on Disney's part. I know, like, most companies would probably want to milk that for all it's worth. Like, hey, it's Luke Skywalker, nostalgia, and the kids love Luke Skywalker, even though he was a hideously boring character in the original films. But anyway, he's great here. This was a kind of cool scene, and so I don't really have a problem with it. And I think the realism of that, he's like a Jedi Master, and it took so much strength out of him that he died. So it just makes a little more sense than how Rey's using Force telepathy and how Leia's Mary Poppinsing her way back to a ship after almost dying in the vacuum of space. Overall, I really enjoyed The Last Jedi. I thought it was a heartfelt and very entertaining film. There are some sort of inconsistencies, some things that don't make a lot of sense, but they can be ignored, and you can just appreciate how much effort that is clear that they put into this movie. And the philosophy of the story was to do away with the past, and I think they did a pretty good job with it. It may piss off some fans, but anyway, I would certainly buy this on Blu-ray. Please send me it for free. Okay, Nintendo? Alright, fam. Cool. So, as always, if you enjoyed this video and you enjoy my reviews in general, hit the like button. Subscribe if you enjoyed the rest of my content for some reason. And I will see you in the next year. Yeah. See you in the next video, whatever that is. And catch you later, mighty. I'm your father. He wasn't very Snoke.